following program is exclusively produced and distributed by Dick Dinman's Double D Productions, Inc., all rights reserved. Hi, Golden Age film fanatics, and welcome to DVD Classics Corner on the Air. My name is Dick Dinman, and our goal is to become your exclusive guide to the very best of the Golden Age classics coming out on DVD. We'll have reviews, breaking news of upcoming releases, plenty of surprise guests, and a special feature devoted to the great Golden Age film composers, which we call Cinemusic. So let's turn on the marquee and lights, camera, action. It's time for Dick's Picks, in which I get to shine the spotlight on one of my Dick's Picks of the week. Fans of John Wayne and John Ford films, and I plead guilty, have not one but two reasons to rejoice, because both The Horse Soldiers and The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance have recently been released in two stunning Blu-ray and 4K incarnations. And having personally seen both films originally in their first-run Broadway engagements, I feel most confident in declaring these two home video releases to be superior in every way, shape, and form. Kino Lorber's brand new 4K master of The Horse Soldiers' dazzling color photography enhances the power of this Civil War epic, and Paramount's 4K restoration of The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance is a black and white jaw-dropper that is sure to draw gasps from fans as its visual and oral magnificence reaches new heights of sheer perfection that makes a powerful film even more powerful. The Horse Soldiers from Kino Lorber and The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance from Paramount Presents are now available, even as we speak. Stay tuned for more Dick's Picks, coming up on DVD Classics Corner on the Air very soon. My distinguished guest today is the internationally acclaimed author and film historian, Joseph McBRIDE, whose book, Searching for John Ford, is, to my mind, the finest book ever written on the legendary John Ford. Joseph McBRIDE, welcome back to DVD Classics Corner on the Air on, I always say this, but I really mean it, a very special occasion. And I might add that your being on my show always means a special occasion.
Thank you. Thank you, Dick. It's great to be with you again.
And we're going to be discussing two of John Ford's films. The first being The Horse Soldiers, and the second one, which we'll do after the break, will be The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. And let's start with The Horse Soldiers, and to start with, why don't you give me your critical assessment of the film?
Well, I just did the audio commentary for the Blu-ray that Kino Lorber put out. It's beautiful. The photography is just stunning in that film. As I say in the commentary, I think the real star of the film is William H. Clothier, the cinematographer who did such a beautiful job. And
yeah.
He had an amazing career. He worked with Ford also on Liberty Valance and Cheyenne Autumn, and he was a camera operator on Ford Apache, etc. He had a long, long career. It's a Civil War film, and John Ford was, he told my friend Gavin Lambert, the writer, once that his main interest in life was the Civil War, not motion pictures. And Gavin thought he was kidding, but I don't think he was kidding. He was a great student of the Civil War, but this was his only film that's totally about the Civil War. Unfortunately, the script is rather weak. John Lee Mann and Martin Racken did the script, and it's got rather contrived romance and enmity between the doctor and the commander, played by Wayne, which kind of bogs things down. But it's as if to compensate, I guess Ford really did some stunning visuals, which he usually did. And the beauty of the land, shot on locations unfamiliar to Ford films usually. It's not Monument Valley, it's Louisiana and Mississippi, very beautiful terrain, juxtaposed with real ugliness of war, and it's a very graphic, frank film. Ford in his later work was very skeptical of heroism and very, he'd been through World War II and Korean War, etc., and he portrayed war as it really is, as ugly and squalid and not glorious at all. And so it's got a lot of power. There are many great scenes. There's a particularly great sequence of boy soldiers marching out to fight.
Oh, yeah.
Based on the Battle of Newmarket. Again, somewhat fictionalized, but very, very powerful. So it's a mixed bag, but, John Ford cavalry film with John Wayne is always a pleasure, and it has a lot of marvelous things in it. It's kind of a case study, as I say, of how a great director can deal with a weak script and make something good out of it. But it's not on its highest level of achievement like, say, Fort Apache or Sure Yellow Ribbon, though.
Right. In essence, I agree with you, but I just have a feeling I like this film more than you do, and I essentially agree with everything you're saying. In addition to Clothier, and I don't know who this man is, but I think whoever was the location manager deserves plaudits, because the locations are simply outstanding in this film. They're, of course, beautifully photographed, but they really do evoke the period. And maybe that's the reason why I like this film so much in many ways, except, and you're certainly right, for the unfortunate romantic angle, which is shoehorned, I feel, shoehorned into the project. And it's certainly the weakest element of the entire film. I just have a feeling that awful "will you have a breast or a thigh" line is courtesy of Marty Racken. I'm almost sure that's the case because I knew the man. And it's vulgar. It could be the single most vulgar scene in any John Ford film.
Well, it's interesting. In Hitchcock's To Catch a Thief, 1955, there's the same gag. And I don't know why
it works. It works.
Well, I was going to say people like it. I've never found that amusing. I think it's kind of stupid.
Well, the thing is, the difference is Hitchcock throws it away, and Cary Grant doesn't react at all. And in this, you have really humiliating thing to happen to an actress. Constance Towers has to say the line while bending down with, deep cleavage. And yes, I agree with you. I find it quite offensive. I think this film is, while it's not one of the great Ford films, it has so many elements that to me are special. One of them would be, for me, William Holden, who ironically did not get on with Ford or Wayne, as far as I know. And I think Holden's sardonic quality really enlivens the film. I think he's very, very good in it. It's strange. I still remember the New York Times, Variety, the Hollywood Reporter reporting how much both Holden and Wayne made in this film, $750,000 in 58.
58.
Dollars plus plus of gross, of course, which percentage of the gross, which I'm sure they never saw, because the film lost, by my calculation, between $1.5 and $2 million.
This is an expensive film, cost about $5 million.
And it grossed $3.5 million.
Holden is terrific, and the problem, though, is John Lee Mann, the screenwriter, told me, and he was a very distinguished screenwriter in his prime, he said he went to see the film after about a week. It had been playing and wasn't doing very well, and he wondered why, and he said he was sitting next to a woman he didn't know, but in the middle of the film, when Holden and Wayne are sparring, as they do throughout the film, and Wayne's character hates doctors. He's going on just abusing the doctor all the time. And the woman said, "Oh, for God's sake, no man hates doctors that much." And, that, I think, captures it. The problem they had was in the novel by Harold Sinclair, and in real life there was a doctor along with the troupe, and there usually is. And it would be kind of idiotic for the commander to say, "I don't want a doctor along," and John Wayne doesn't want a doctor along, and he does nothing but abuse him. And they put in a scene to explain this about his wife being killed by an inept doctor, but it's a very hokey reason. But to have them arguing all the way through is tiresome, and makes Wayne seem not only unpleasant but kind of dumb, He's a smart commander otherwise, but he's got this hang-up about doctors, and it's tedious. But the reason they did this was the Mirish Company, which produced the film, told Mahan and Racken, who were the producers, that they would make this film if they could get two big male stars. And so they wanted to get Clark Gable, and then they couldn't get him, and so they got Holden, and then Ford got Wayne. So they had to build up the character of the Doctor to make it equal, screen time with Wayne, and that's where the problem arose. In real life, as somebody pointed out, the woman and her slave woman who goes along with her probably might have been shot as spies in real life. It would have been horrible to watch, but they're burdened with her, and Constance Stowers is a good actress and does the best she can, but it's
the role as written is a cartoon, and it's overplayed. Dramatically overplayed.
She plays a kind of a fake Southern belle for a while to kind of fool them, and then they expose her, and she becomes more sympathetic and likable, and she has a romance with Wayne, which is kind of hard to buy. If anybody would have had a romance with her in that film, it would be the Holden character, more of a ladies' man. The thing that you point out, the authenticity of the feeling of the film, is something Ford was great at. Orson Welles said, "John Ford knows what the earth is made of." There is something very, very receptive to the land in every Ford film, and he really knows how to put men and horses.
He certainly does. And by the way, your commentary on the Horse Soldiers Blu-ray from Kino Lorber is excellent, but I have one disagreement with you. One thing that you said, which for me, John Wayne's barroom scene, where he's drunk and he's just killed God knows how many, of the enemy, and is surrounded by the wounded, and to me, his rage in that scene is not overplayed. You had to have that in the film to justify the way he treats Holden and Holden's assistant, played by O.Z. Whitehead, throughout the film. There has to be a reason.
Well, yeah, but it's sort of, it's like, okay, let's stop the film and have a scene explaining why he hates doctors. But also, to me, a commander should not get drunk in front of everybody, and that's what happens. I'm granted he's in a battlefield hospital, and they've had this bloody engagement, and his mission is not to fight the enemy, but to destroy railroads, and which rankles him because he's a railroad builder in the film. That was a good addition. But he's there to destroy things, and the film doesn't totally make clear that Gerson's raid was primarily a diversion so that Grant could take Vicksburg. Grant had been besieging Vicksburg for months, and so they staged this partly to draw Confederate troops out to try to pursue and attack Gerson, and it worked. It did well, and then along the way they were destroying things, but he didn't want to fight, and the battle at Newton Station was a minor skirmish in real life, and they built that into a big set piece, which is okay, but he gets wildly drunk afterwards in front of everybody, and that's really, the commander wouldn't do that, I'm afraid.
No, probably not, but I think Wayne is not overacting. I think it's a powerful scene just because of the way Wayne plays it with no holds barred. It's not subtle, but to me, it's an important scene, even though it may not be plausible.
He's my favorite actor, John Wayne, but usually he's a subtle actor. He really is. He's kind of a low-key actor. He doesn't overdo scenes, and I think he's fine throughout almost the entire film. And that's the scene where he uncharacteristically emotes in a broad way. But I mean, again, it's in the script, and sometimes one thing I learned as a reviewer of plays and films was to distinguish between what the script does and what the actor does. You know, is it the actor's fault or the script? In that case, he's doing what the script told him to do.
Yeah. Well, all in all, though, I think we can say that we both heartily recommend this Kino Lorber Blu-ray of the Horse.
It's such a beautiful film. I mean, it really, as you say, transports you back. Ford's films, make you feel like you're back in the Civil War, and the authenticity of the men and the costumes. For example, in the great sequence of the boy soldiers, they found a woman who lived nearby in Mississippi who had a cadet uniform from the 1860s, and they borrowed it and they made exact copies of it. And you know, Ford was very keen on historical accuracy of costumes and other things, and even if the storyline is not totally accurate, it's physically accurate, and that's what war is like, and that's what Ford was doing in his later work. So it really has the sights and sounds and smells and pain of real warfare.
It does, and as you say, personally, I would nominate the entire sequence of the Boys Military Academy as one of the great sequences in all of Ford films. I think it's
I agree.
that good. If I was doing a collage of the best of Ford, this scene would be very prominent in that. And we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to come back with Jimmy Stewart and John Wayne in John Ford's The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance.
We pause now for station identification.
DVD Classics Corner on the Air is exclusively produced and released by Dick Dinman's Double D Productions, Inc. All rights reserved. And we're back with Joseph McBRIDE on a very special picture, and believe me, I do love certain elements of The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, but I have a feeling that we will agree to disagree on certain points. But first, I would like your feelings about The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance.
Well, you know, disagreements between two film buffs and film mavens are part of what makes life interesting. But I think this is one of Ford's really great films, and it's his artistic testament, I feel, was made very late in his career, one of his last Westerns, 1962. And it's a very self-conscious, expressionistic Western, all about ideas. It's a film of ideas. It's not a film of landscapes. It's deliberately not beautiful. I mean, great photography by William Clothier in black and white, but it's not showing pictorial beauty or fancy settings or anything like that. It's more close-ups than Ford usually used because it's about the characters and the ideas and the things they represent. It's a film about the Western mythology that runs our country, and it's very timely. I mean, even today, because we live in such a violent country, and this film deals with one of those classic gunfights that helped tame the West. And Film Quarterly, which has always been kind of a left-wing publication, back in '62, my friend Ernest Callenbeck, who was the editor, panned Liberty Valance. It didn't get treated well by American critics, who didn't seem to get it. And he quoted Mao Zedong saying that this film exemplifies what Chairman Mao said, that political power grows out of the barrel of a gun. And he thought that was just terrible, that this film shows the gunfight taming this town and making Jimmy Stewart a hero, even though it's revealed that he didn't kill Liberty Valance. And I think that's what's partly good about the film. It's made a year before the Kennedy assassination, in which political power grew out of the barrel of a gun. The president was killed. And this film actually foreshadows the Kennedy assassination. I just wrote a book called Political Truth, the Media and the Assassination of President Kennedy. And it's about some of the same themes in Liberty Valance, about how myths are created by our culture to paper over unpleasant truths. And that's what Liberty Valance is about. And the scene in which Wayne kills Valance from ambush in a alleyway with Woody Strode's help is the kind of grassy knoll sequence foreshadowing the Kennedy assassination. Ford was like the canary in the coal mine. He was onto certain things in our culture. And so this man, Jimmy Stewart's character, lives the lie, and he doesn't realize it till late in the film, and it's devastating for him. And the other thing that is a fascinating thing, so to me it's a film of ideas, a great screenplay by James Warner Bella and Willis Goldbeck. Very wonderful, thoughtful film. It's a film that analyzes itself too, which is very unusual. It's a very philosophical script, and the characters stand for certain principles and codes of behavior, and they debate them in the film, and it's very explicit. And usually when I show this film in my Ford class, I don't let students write about it because it's too easy to write about, because the film writes about itself in a sense, and the students tend to just repeat what the film says. But it's full of riches. And when one of the times I interviewed Jimmy Stewart, who I worked with a number of times, I gave him the book that Michael Willington and I did on Ford, and it has a chapter on Liberty Valance. And at the end of the film, when he and his wife, Vera Miles, are looking out the window, and she says, "Look at it, once it was a wilderness, now it's a garden, aren't you proud?" The camera lingers on Stewart's face, and there's kind of a flicker in his eye, and he does not look proud. And we wrote, Ford is asking us, are you proud at what happened to America? And Stewart said, I gave him this on the set of The Shootist, and a few days later I saw him, and he said, "Well, I was reading that chapter you wrote, and I thought you're right. I think that is the point of the film. Are you proud?" You know, Ford's asking us that. And it's a very downbeat, bitter film about history, and exposes history as a big sham or a lie, usually. And a lot of American history is based on lies, and that's what this film deals with.
Well, I think we have a little bit of a misunderstanding on one level. But first, I have to say, I think this is one of the great screenplays. It may be the best screenplay for a Western ever written. I do think the screenplay is marvelous. The misunderstanding may be that I think you think that I don't like the fact that Liberty Valance is in black and white, which is absolutely not the case. I feel this film had to be in black and white. But I would, and in preparing for our chat today, I screened 3 Ford films. Straight Shooting from 1917, Three Bad Men from 1926, and My Darling Clementine. And my feeling is that Liberty Valance would be a far greater film if it was shot the way My Darling Clementine was shot. And you were kind enough to send me John Ford's letter to Bosley Crowther, the New York Times critic, which I found fascinating. And you will disagree with me on this, but I have a feeling, because Ford never did that before, and, certainly that's the last thing he would do. I think John Ford was disappointed by the visuals, by the very plain rap, low A.C. Lyles type town visuals, and I think that's why he wrote the letter. I wish I could talk to John Ford. I only met him once, but I would be so fascinated by what he'd have to say. And I have a quote from William Clavier, a curious quote which I've found, which seems to me kind of strange, and I'll quote. "There was one reason and one reason only. Paramount was cutting costs. Otherwise, we would have been in Monument Valley or Brackettville, and we would have had color stock. Ford had to accept these terms or not make the film." I find it impossible.
Did Clavier actually say that?
Yeah, that's a quote, a direct quote, and I don't know. I don't get it.
He also gave an interview in which he said the film had to be in black and white because Ford wanted the flashback in which Wayne kills Liberty Valance in the shadowy alleyway had to be in black and white. It wouldn't work in color.
Yeah.
And I found Ford's contract, because there were rumors the film was shot in color and released in black and white. That's just not true.
No.
And I found Ford's contract, it specified that it had to be in black and white. Ford insisted on that. And what he wrote Crowther, as you say, this is the only time he ever did this that I'm aware of, because he was loath to telling reviewers what to think or what his intentions were. But he wanted Crowther to know that he said the film is stylized like a silent Western, and he did that on purpose. And Crowther didn't get it, and he attacked the film because he said it's visually uninteresting and it's flat, but it's really clear when they go to John Wayne's ranch in the film. It's very scruffy-looking terrain.
Oh, yeah.
Ford could have picked a beautiful location if he'd wanted, but he didn't want to lull us with the kind of romantic beauty that he put into My Darling Clementine.
Yeah.
And that film is very similar in some ways to Liberty Valance. It's about cleaning up a rough town, etc. But Ford was not too high on Clementine, even though it's a beautiful film in many ways. He said somebody asked him what he thought about it later, and he said, "Well, my children liked it a lot, but I
love it."
I think he felt. I mean, I love it in some ways, but I think it's very inaccurate. It's very mythical. It's a mythical version of the gunfight at the OK Corral. I've been to the OK Corral. It's this very scruffy little alleyway.
Well, it's a remake of a Randolph Scott movie called Frontier Marshal. Same story.
Well, Ford sets it in Monument Valley with grand visuals, spectacular, and Earp is Wyatt Earp in real life was kind of they called him the fighting pimp. He was a rather morally ambiguous character, and Henry Fonda's character is much more heroic. And so Ford was disenchanted with all those things when he made Liberty Valance, and he was making the film in studio sets. He was trying to foreground the faces and the ideas. It's like a Carl Dreyer film, in my opinion. It's got that stark quality. He doesn't want to lull you with beautiful scenery, and he doesn't feel that the framing story is around 1910, and it's a very disillusioned look at modern America. And when you see the town, it's not appealing or attractive. It's very kind of run-of-the-mill, like most American cities are. You know, you go around and every city looks pretty much the same now with Walmart and McDonald's and everything. And that's kind of what Ford was telling us. He was ahead of his time. He was saying that the frontier days had problems and they were violent, but they were much more vital. And then the modern world has leached out a lot of the vitality and energy.
I have some other reservations, modest reservations, and I've just finished telling you that I think Wayne is great in The Horse Soldiers. Mm-hmm. I have a problem with his performance in this film. It seems to me that he's a big, boastful bully. For instance, I do not find the scene where he shoots the paint cans to cover Jimmy Stewart to be funny, or it sets me against the character. I don't really have a great affection for Wayne's work in this film, and he is capable of incredible sensitivity. In a very bad film called In Harm's Way, he gives one of his, to my mind, great performances. And the sensitivity he shows in The Cowboys and The Shootist and She Wore a Yellow Ribbon is magnificent. But here he's big, boastful, and a bully. And that's why I can't feel that much at the end of the film.
I think he's complex. He's partly a bully and partly very sensitive, and he's a character who sacrifices himself for the future. He sees that Jimmy Stewart and Vera Miles, who he loves, are the wave of the future, and he sacrifices his life for this, and he's very selfless. And toward the end of the film, he's very weary, and he doesn't want to get involved in fighting or shooting. He's got that flaw that he lets Liberty Valance run wild because he's an individualist out on his ranch, and everybody else in town, for a long time I was kind of negative toward the Stewart character because I think he's a fraud. I mean, but my wife told me, she said, well, think about this. He's the only guy in town who stands up to Liberty Valance. He has a lot of guts, even though he can't shoot worth a damn. And, but it's true. I mean, Spielberg said when he was a kid, he identified with the Stewart character because he said, I was the kid getting pushed around at school, and I always felt bad that I wasn't fighting back. And here's this Jimmy Stewart guy who's a tin horn, or he's an Easterner, he's a lawyer, he's not a man of action, but he does stand up and fight back. Wayne's character, I think the later Ford characters, he was disillusioned with heroism, and you're right that the scene with shooting the paint cans is cruel and it's unpleasant, and it's not. I don't think it's supposed to be funny. I think it's just...
I saw it first run at the Capitol in New York, and the audience roared at the scene.
Well, I wouldn't be surprised, but I think it's painful because you like the Jimmy Stewart character at that point, and Wayne is taunting him and being cruel. But he says, I'm trying to show you what you're up against with Liberty Valance. When I met John Wayne, he was even larger than he appears on screen.
Oh my God! When I met him, I shook hands with him. I've never seen hands like that. Do you know? I'm a normal height. I felt like Mickey Rooney next to John Wayne.
Well, I felt the same way. It's funny, Jack. I was going to mention that I spent 2 days on the set of The Shootist, interviewing Wayne and watching him shoot his scene with Stewart. And when I went in his trailer with him and shook his hand, my hand disappeared. I'm 6'2.5". My hand disappeared in his huge hand. And he was wearing cowboy boots and a hat. He looked like he was about 7 feet tall. And he had to duck to get into his SUV that he was using as a trailer. And he was the only actor I've ever met, the only star who's bigger than he appears on screen. Usually people are smaller than they appear.
Right,
but
right.
Wayne was gigantic,
What are your 3 favorite Ford films? And I'll tell you mine afterward.
Okay, well, they vary from time to time. Right now it's Wagon Master and They Were Expendable, and, the third one, I don't know what. Maybe I'd put Liberty Valance up there. 7 Women is one of my very favorites as well. well. I love that film. It's a great film. Yeah.
Well, my favorites are all made in the same, or were all made at about this, almost consecutively, if not consecutively. I absolutely adore, and I think it may be my favorite Ford film. You may be surprised. Young Mr. Lincoln.
Oh, that's a great film.
Oh, my God. I love that film. My second favorite would be The Grapes of Wrath, and my third would be How Green Was My Valley, which I can't watch because I end up crying like...
Yeah, me too. It's
I
so tragic.
I cannot watch it. That's a tragedy. It's my third favorite Ford film, and I can't watch it.
Yeah,
I certainly can't watch it with anyone else in the room because I'm bawling.
Well, that was a great period for Ford, as you say, and you and Mrs. Ford, Mary Ford, would agree because Young Mr. Lincoln was her favorite of her husband's films. And that is a sublime film, very beautiful. That's the period where Ford was, he believed in heroism and he believed in the American dream.
Yeah.
And Lincoln represented the best of America for him and for everybody else. But by the time of Liberty Valance, he was very disillusioned with what had happened to America and the revolution that we had fought for and that Lincoln died for. And the modern world had not turned out well, in Ford's opinion. Ford was the kind of person who always mourned loss and the loss of the frontier and the coming of modern America, the kind of soulless, impersonal America, corporate America. He really didn't like that. It's a memory film. It's a film. The whole film, you have to remember, is Jimmy Stewart's story and tale that he tells, and that's why a lot of the settings are stylized and the acting is bigger than life. Liberty Valance is a very wildly flamboyant character. What a great performance by Lee Marvin.
And how? Oh, my God.
Lee Marvin was the real thing. He was a sniper in World War II. He had been through hell and back, and he was just a magnificent actor. So the film is just full of very larger-than-life characters, and yet in the modern framing story, everybody is subdued and sad and worn out, and that's kind of Ford's view of America.
Right,
yeah.
Right. Well, bottom line, we have The Horse Soldiers from Kino Lorber and The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance from Paramount Presents. And I have to say, both discs are absolutely gorgeous. Horse Soldiers is one of the best transfers I've seen on Blu-ray. And for those of you who bought the original Blu-ray of The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, I have to tell you, just throw it out, or maybe a Frisbee for your dogs, because this job that Paramount has done on The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, in both the 4K version and the Blu-ray version, is absolutely one of the greatest transfers of a black and white film that I've ever seen. So I think we can say we both recommend both releases. And we're running out of time, Joe, but what have you in store for us for the future?
Well, I had 4 books that came out between October and March, and so I've been busy promoting them, and I've been thinking about the next book. I haven't quite decided what I'm going to do next, but I've been mulling I often mull things before I get into them, because when you do a book, it's a big commitment of time, and I think about it. But I did a book on Billy Wilder that came out in October, and I did my Kennedy book, Political Truth, in December, and then I did my update on whatever happened to Orson Welles, a new edition, in January, and the Coen Brothers, The Holder and Human Comedy.
Oh, thank you for sending that to me. It's a wonderful book. I enjoyed it tremendously.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you, Dick. Well, all these projects sort of came to a head. Some of those, the Kennedy book took a long time. I've been studying that case since it happened, even before it happened. I wrote a short story about the assassination in 1961, and so when I saw Liberty Valance, it prefigures the assassination, as I say, and also the mythology, the lies that surround that, and that's what Ford is saying about American history. And I always tell students, make up your own mind about history, study as many sources as possible, and as Oscar Wilde said, history is just gossip, and you have to be very careful with history because it's easily distorted. We see that happening in our world today with fake news and lies and disinformation, and Ford was dealing with all that at the time.
Well, as always, Joe, it's a great privilege to have you on the show. I look forward to our get-togethers so much, and I can't wait until the next time, and thank you for your generosity in spending time with us.
Well, thank you, Dick. It's always a great pleasure. You're such an expert and such a lover of films, and really your stories and your inside reports of audiences and meeting people, it's all just fascinating, and I love talking to you. So anytime you want me back, I'm your guy.
Oh, that's great to hear. I'll look forward to it. Thanks again, Joe.
Thanks, Dick.
Well, that's my show for today. DVD Classics Corner on the Air is conceived, written, produced, and directed by me, Double D. And if you'd like to hear some of my older vintage shows, please go to www.dvdclassicscorner.net, where in addition to the broadcasts, you'll find hundreds of my print reviews of classic DVD releases. So, until next week,
keep well, keep happy, and keep listening.